Here we are in the blacksmith shop, our first stop. Back in the day, blacksmithing was vital to a town. I mean, all the stuff blacksmiths made. I mean, simple stuff like nails and wire, fundamental stuff, chains, horseshoes, but kitchen implements, tools. And so back to that theme about, hey, if you want to start a town, you need more than farmers. That's pretty much what they had in Jamestown, which it was an old settlement. In fact, I thought it was the first settlement when I was in the 4th grade, but I was seeing it through an English lens, not a Spanish lens. But they were mostly farmers. And you need more than farmers to start a town in the New World. And so the blacksmith really helped things along in St. Augustine. And there was more than one, but imagine you're back in the day in 1565, and this is a replica, a copy of what one would have looked like back in the day. And so it had some key components. One is the forge itself, so the fire. Think of it like a fire on steroids, right? Okay, and I got irons in the fire, right? That's where the expression comes from. In everyday life, when you got irons in the fire, you got opportunities. So the blacksmith, when he's got irons in the fire, provided they're glowing bright orange, he's got opportunities to make things. So he starts his fire, he gets it up to like 1,200 to 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, at which iron starts to soften up, becomes flexible and malleable, and actually starts to glow orange. And we're going to check in a second to see if we've got any that has that malleability so we can make something. So after they get the fire started, they would work it with bellows. So that's how they got oxygen to the fire to keep it going during the day. And these are called Concertina Bellows. Think about that. As a musician, I kind of like that. Concertina is a little accordion. Makes sense. So it's like I'm acting like an accordion, except I'm making fire with my air instead of music. I don't know how I can get a tone out of this.
So you got to make the anvil sing.
What's that?
You got to make the anvil sing.
Well, good for you, because I'm going to get to that. It has a really rich tone, as you'll see.
Oh, yeah.
So, back in the day, hopefully they'd have an apprentice doing this. I wish I had one. I got to keep the fire stoked all day. But so, no, seriously, the apprentices, they'd be working on their physical shape, but they'd be watching the blacksmith and learning the tricks of the trade, and in a couple of years they'd learn it. It's not like you can read about it in a book back in the day, right? So it's very experiential. So it's good to have a mentor. And they handed the trade down through families. That's the reason why there's a lot of smiths in the phone book, right? When you think about it. So maybe your grandfather was a blacksmith, his son was a blacksmith, and his son was a blacksmith back in the day. And there's a great poem too, called "The Village Blacksmith" by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. I just like saying his name. I had a basset hound once named Wadsworth. But it opens with, "Underneath the spreading chestnut trees," I think that's what it is, "the village blacksmith stands." That's all I know. But it's kind of a nice romantic poem about the blacksmith. And they're kind of brawny guys. Because they're slinging chisels and hammers all day long, right? Tools that are made out of iron that they made themselves. Look at this. There's a different kind of hammer and a chisel. I've got my favorite tools over here. So it was a physical thing, and it was an art too. They got to know when the iron was in good shape to be wrought, to be worked, and that's a great example when it's that brilliant orange color. That's just emission. That's electromagnetic emission. Right? It's like a stove burner, right? Something like this. It heats up and it's emitting heat radiation, which is infrared, which you can't see. That's why our military uses goggles. They can see the heat of bodies with infrared goggles. But your eye can only see visible wavelengths. And so it's not until the iron gets really hot, about 1,200 degrees, that you can see it. And the blacksmith, there was one reason why his shop was dark, by the way, because he liked the contrast between the ambient darkness and the color of the metal, because it was an indication of how malleable it was. So it looks like we got a great candidate there. But before we make a little simple something here, let's just talk about some of the other tools. So, as you pointed out, the most well-known tool is the anvil. And, as you pointed out, if nothing else, for the sound. That's pretty resonant tone. Right, I would like to hook it up to an amplifier, Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. And they actually said that they could tell the quality of the iron from the resonance of the tone, which kind of makes sense, right? It's really kind of uniform piece of iron. It's a big, massive piece of iron, right? A cast piece, right? And that would be located centrally in the shop because you got to get the iron to it to do things, and it would be located at this height so you could take advantage of gravity, right? Maybe a taller guy would have it even a little lower, and they put their arm out. They'd see, when you're working the hammer, when it's extended, so that's where they put the anvil. So it'd be close by. It's kind of like the control center. You got your anvil, so you can shape things, but you also would use a vise. back in the day. In fact, they would instrument it with this little U-bolt kind of thing made out of iron. You can see it's very easy to, well, I'll show you just real quick. I mean, this flat iron here is probably not up to the same temperature, but it's also, it's been worked a little bit. It's sort of got some glowing color, but see how flexible it is, like taffy. You know, that's a piece of flat iron. In fact, that guy, I'm sure I could just hit him with a chisel and he would break off, but we'll use that in a more refined way to make a hook in a second. But let's see what else we got. So they would have had a grinder, a stone grinder. Let's say we were making a knife or something, you know, when we were in the final stages. They have a little handle on the other side. They get it going, and you can make a sharp edge. And then they had what was used as part of the finishing process when you're making something and you want to make it a little more reliable, and also you want to cool it off and control how hard it is when it's back to room temperature. So they use this. I won't tell you what it is, and I'll have you guess. I'm sure some people know, but it's kind of fun to play with. Let me use it and see what you can guess. It's not pineapple. All right, and then we'll call this the mystery barrel, because that's part of this post-processing. So let's make a hook. So this is like blacksmithing 101. Let's pretend we're back in the day. There's a woman from Spain who brings a cast iron pan, as you can see here. Which, by the way, so she came with Menendez. She's in the town, and she had a blacksmith back in Spain. Maybe he came with him on the ship. Who knows? It's all imaginary, right? So, a great piece of blacksmith work. I mean, so he would have had a flat piece of iron. Pretty easy to kind of curl it up when it was hot and make the pan. And then he would have punched holes right here, made some rivets, attached the handle, and then the handle's kind of elegant, nice piece of flat iron, but then in the end here, bored out a piece and made a nice little curl, just like the links in the chain. That's called drawing the metal. And they repeatedly beat on a piece of iron so they could lengthen it out or widen it. It was called drawing, like when they made knives. They would draw Jim Bluey's blade. All right, so she comes, and I can't believe it, but she didn't bring a hook. So she gets here, and she comes to a blacksmith shop, and she sees how this guy makes lots of hooks, so why can't he make one for me? So we would barter. Maybe she brings corn from her garden. I like corn, so we got a deal. So let's make her a hook. So let's get that. I'm gonna use my gloves just because it's a little more expeditious than the tongs. But because this piece, even though it's not orange, it's really hot. Now this guy, you can see he's starting to cool off. I mean, the fire is the end of the day. So we better make our hook right away. So let's see. I want the hook to be in the same dimension. See, look, it's like taffy when you get it. I tell you, let's make a little different hook, right? So let's have one end be kind of elegant, and the little one just kind of functional. In fact, on the anvil, I don't need much anvil work, but I'll make these surfaces a little more parallel. There. So again, not that elegant, but functional. So now, you know, she can, maybe in her tent, she can hang her pot. So I can get to the pineapple. Not pineapple, not. Sometimes a little more dramatic.
Is that
See, where there's smoke, there's fire. So you know what it is?
Anvil fat.
It's beeswax.
Oh,
So actually, it was used to rust proof it. Seriously. So
yeah,
so when the iron heats up, it becomes a little more porous, and so the beeswax melts and seals it up. So it's kind of an ingenious way to deal with the reliability a little bit. So I mean, the bane of metals is rust, right? I mean, see, look at all the iron things on the door. They're not black. The black in blacksmith is for the fact that iron at room temperature on rust is black, but when it rusts, it's not as strong. And you know, think about your bicycle chains in Florida, yeah, or your air conditioning units, right? I mean, so I mean, a lot of metals are rust. I mean, like steel rusts too, unless you have chromium in it. It's sort of so stainless steel. Like if you're getting a, I remember when I moved down here, everyone said make sure you get a stainless steel grill, yeah, because everything rusts in Florida. So back in the day, they dealt with it. I mean, kind of in an ingenious way using beeswax, and then after that, they would quench it, and they would use the slack or the slake, it was called. So it's a barrel full of a solution. This is just regular water. It's just got a nice sound. Yeah, so I'm quenching. You've heard the expression like tempering steel, tempering metal. So what this was used for is to control the rate at which it cools back to room temperature. And that in turn controls how hard, how sort of brittle it is. How to think of it, how stiff it is. When this, you know, kind of quasi-liquid solid thing comes back to a full solid, you know, the molecular structure can be, you know, stronger, not so strong. An example of something that you wouldn't want to be brittle, and so you'd be careful how you cooled it off, would be like a sword. Think about when you strike something, you don't want it to be brittle, because it'll shatter, right? But in this case, you don't have to be very careful. I mean, it's just kind of a functional thing. I mean, we could abuse this. And oh, by the way, strike while iron is hot. I mean, you know, this thing is as cool as can be, right? So the blacksmith knew there's a limited amount of time to do what he has to do before you have to reheat it. And then some pieces, let's say this wasn't up to her liking, and I stayed with it instead of starting with another piece of stock. At some point, if you rework it, it becomes fatigued, right? And it's definitely not. So during the day, just to save iron, I've worked this a couple times. But Blacksmithing 101, you too can do it. Has anyone seen Forged in Fire? Okay. Well, this wasn't that. But yeah, that's the American Idol of Blacksmithing. It's a great show. But no, seriously, if you wanted to do some blacksmithing, and one of the guys here is a blacksmith. He's a farrier. Scotty's a blacksmith. And in most cases, the working blacksmiths today are farriers because people still need horseshoes and stuff. It's sort of a specialty. But it's really become kind of an art more than a trade. I mean, there's some in Amish country, right? I mean, still working blacksmiths in Amish country. And I have people who come in and say they know blacksmiths, that kind of thing. But if you really wanted to do it, obviously it doesn't have to be so authentic. Just get a fire up to temperature. I mean, you can have a home forge, and there's different ways to, you can take a settling torch and heat a piece of metal up. But you can have a little home forge, and you don't really need bellows, right? You just have to keep getting oxygen to the fire, maybe with a fan. And then you can buy an anvil on Amazon. Get some chisels and some hammers, and away you go. Next thing you know, you have Forged in Fire. Any questions?